Right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Commsverse. This session is called Take Your Agents Out of the Shed. It's presented by Debbie Thomas, Alex Black, and Peter Fedarb of Enghouse Interactive. Over to you.
Thank you, Randy. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session. I think, firstly, I would like to extend our thanks to all the sponsors. It is good to see so many big names on there, and thank you to everyone for helping bring this event together and making it a reality, because we do live in some very strange times, and it's very generous of them to do so. Okay, I'm joined today by, my name's Alex Black. I'm the CTO of Enghouse, which effectively means that I work in the product side of the company. I'm going to be joined today by two of my colleagues. For those who don't know us, I should also start by give you a little bit of an introduction to who we are. Enghouse Interactive is a company that's been going for a very long time. Our relationship with Microsoft spans about 12, 13 years. Our first product introductions back to the days of LCS, and over the years we've moved through OCS, Link, Skype, and now Teams. And certainly in the Skype world, I think we had the privilege of having more contact centers integrated onto Skype than anyone else, and our record for Teams has got off to a very good start as well. We now have 2 products certified, and we have coming up to probably a dozen customers starting now using Teams, so in real life. So that's kind of good news. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm joined by 2 of my colleagues. Peter Fedarb, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Alex. I'm Peter Fedarb. I'm a senior pre-sales consultant at Enghouse, which means that I support customers through their procurement cycle and help them with all the technical details and trying to break the technology down and make sure that the solution fits for them.
Thanks, Pete. And Pete has been with us for a long time and has quite a considerable amount of experience in the world of Teams. So hopefully that will come out during the conversation. And last but definitely not least, we have Debbie Thomas.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name's Debbie Thomas. I look after pre-sales predominantly in Western and Northern Europe, although we do also deal with partners in North Africa and the Middle East. I've been at Enghouse for 21 years, and in that time I have obviously performed many different roles in that time you might expect. So from training to project management, professional services, delivering of projects, designing solutions, and more recently in my current role in pre-sales. We have a team of 10 pre-sales consultants, and between us we cover 17 different product types, obviously related to contact center. And I think the vast majority of those Pete and I have been involved with. So thank you for joining us today. So why don't we kick things off? Alex, perhaps you can talk to us a little bit, explain the concept of taking your agents out of the shed. What does that mean? And what's the impact, do you think, of home working on the contact centre?
Yeah, an interesting title. This came from an interview I gave to Rob Scott of UC Today earlier this year when talking about Teams. And really at the time, it was before really the pandemic had started to have a big impact outside of China. And we were really talking about it in terms of breaking down the organizational boundaries that typically exist between the front, middle, and back offices. You know, typically the agents, the contact center sits in the front office, deals with customers every day of the week. But more and more, companies are looking in the future to break the boundaries that exist between the middle and the front, the middle, and the back office down, so that they can actually deal with the customer interaction in a single go. And the idea there is that you can pass the interaction back to specialists if and when required. Now, some of those specialists can sit in the middle office and typically will be able to resolve a lot of issues. But sometimes when it gets really deep and difficult, it needs to go into the back office. And in order to do that, one of the things we talked about was Teams being able to help, and not just Teams, but other technologies as well. And that was where we came from, and that was about getting the agents out of the shed, because a lot of people regard contact centres as big sheds full of people. And of course, in the last couple of months, the world has been turned upside down. So the concept of taking the agent out of the shed has become very, very different, in that most people have in fact been working from home. The sheds have all been closed. We've all been working from home. And that's been something that's existed for many years. In some areas, I know of a 200, 250 seat contact centre that runs in a data centre that's never had a shed. People have always worked from home. But more and more now, we see everyone is working at home. And that I think has made a very big difference as to how people work. And therefore, we need to think about what, from a technology point of view, but very, very importantly, this isn't just a technology thing, this is also a psychology thing. How do people work in that environment? When, if you think about it, when you're in a shed, you're surrounded by your friends, you're surrounded by your colleagues. When you're dealing with a customer, you can put your hand up and get assistance. You can reach over the partition and talk to somebody. You can talk to somebody who's behind you, and you can get help to deal with any difficult interactions. Right now, the agent's lucky if they've got their budgie, their cat, and their dog to talk to. They don't have the concept. They don't have the concept of colleagues at the minute. Those colleagues sit in the ether. They don't actually kind of work in the same shed as they used to. So I think that makes a very, very big difference as to how the agent feels, how the agent behaves. And I know, Debbie, over the years, you've spent a lot of time dealing with agents, working with agents, helping agents through, and actually not just agents, but helping supervisors to improve the performance of their contact centres. How do you think, given the front, middle, back office, and now they're working from home, how do you think that has an effect on the agent themselves?
Yes, no, thank you. It's a good question. I have spent a lot of time in contact centres in my early days as going in and training agents and supervisors. It kind of gave me the chance to observe at a very close hand and to kind of mingle with agents sort of in their restrooms, taking breaks, etc. And I've always admired how in most contact centres, the culture is very much one of teams where they are very closely supportive of each other. Supervisors, team leaders will make sure that they're working as a team. At the end of the day, we do, I think in most contact centres, it's a difficult job because they're sitting in a remote place from their end customers that they're speaking to, other interaction types. And at the end of a conversation, it might be there was a particularly tough or challenging call, or it might be that, they were really pleased with how something went. So, as I say, the culture of the team spirit has always been that you've got these colleagues around you who can empathise and understand the situation you're in, and they can provide that immediate support. So as you say, Alex, things change pretty quickly in terms of the COVID situation, where without a huge amount of preparatory time, I think there were a couple of organisations we've been talking to who maybe did one dry run of people working at home, but the need to get people out and working at home happened very quickly. And so I think you've found yourselves, particularly in the contact centre environment, you have people who've probably never worked at home before in the vast majority of cases. And, it's something that's new to them, something feels probably very alien, and perhaps also isolated in some respect. Yeah. Now, of course, there are, with most contact centre applications, there will be tools that will give agents visibility of who's logged in as their colleagues, where they're wanting to hand over customer interactions. But I think also, particularly with something like Microsoft Teams, which provides a kind of a friendlier, more informal type interface, that allows the agents to continue to chat to one another. The use of emojis will say a lot because it allows them to express their feelings if they're feeling upset worried, if they, thumbs up, they're going well. And from a supervisor's perspective as well, the ability to, again, through contact center applications, you're going to have certain elements of visibility for looking at productivity, adherence to schedules, that type of thing. And all of that can happen remotely. And most contact center applications have had this concept of virtual environments where you do have agents located in different parts of the world. So there's an element of that is still always been in place. But I think, again, with Teams, that more informal level of being able to chat to either agents on a one-to-one basis, to have video conferences on a one-to-one, catch up at the end of the week type thing. And also to continue to support that team spirit, being able to talk to your team as a whole through obviously the Teams mechanism. And I think the other key thing for agents, again, working in these remote environments, they might be in their spare bedroom or at their dining room table, is the ability to know that they can access the back office, the middle office experts. And, traditionally that isn't something that you would do through the contact center application per se, but something supportive like Teams, they're going to be able to reach out and still have that support and that input from their back office colleagues.
Yeah, I think that's very important. At the end of the day, contact centres are made of people, and people do need to interact to be able to do their jobs and do them well. Pete, you're a man who comes across a lot of our customers and you've been dealing with a number of customers who've already moved to Teams. How do you think Teams has impacted the ability to help this front, middle, back office thing and the home working thing? How do you think that's had an impact?
Well, I can actually give you an example. We were talking to a customer just as the COVID situation brought out. They're an Irish-based customer, and they actually work in the energy provision. So they're considered one of those critical services there because they supply gas. There's a lot of emergency type situations that they need to deal with. Therefore, within a week, they'd actually gone from a traditional PBX with traditional handsets. It wasn't capable of giving them remote working. So they stepped up into the Teams environment that's there to deploy 100 agents and 3 operators completely working from home within 7 days. Obviously, they during the training, they saw from the supervisor's perspective that they would have all the tools required to monitor those staff to see that people were actually in and available and working that's there. What they were concerned about, though, also was the agents moving to a different type of technology. And again, it's one of those that people are different people, different within there. And some of those people will take a little bit longer to adjust that's there. But I would say somewhere between 70 to 80% of their team immediately adapted to being able to use soft phones capabilities that were there. They were, as Debbie was saying, sending emojis to each other and that to give their experience that's there. Also making greater use of video, because video has become a little bit more informal, that they will be able to call between the team to build that whole team experience that they had. Therefore, what they actually found was that something they was very nervous about all of the reasons why you wouldn't move from home, about the can they manage people, are they going to adapt to it. They actually found once they actually got into that cycle and they did that rapidly, they didn't have time to think about too much about those problems. They just jumped straight into it. And when they came out the other side, they were actually quite surprising on how all the tools help them cope with that, and especially using the teams around the ability to co-browse, the ability to screen share, the ability to actually sort of have that video there. They were happily running a video sort of webinar to the from the business, if you like, the higher levels of the business to the agents teams that's there to get the feedback during that cycle that's there. And even the managing directors were quite amazed at the positive feedback that they got at that point, and they were expecting quite a lot of negative, which you get during change with any humans that are there.
Yeah.
And that's a good point you mentioned there about video, Pete. I think, we are used to through COVID, we're used to having a lot of meetings on video, and people generally are more comfortable with video. But Alex, how do you see video becoming more prevalent as a standard communication channel within the contact centre?
I think that's very interesting point. You know, if you think about it, some of our products had video for many years, and actually a couple of years ago, we actually removed some video functionality from some of our products because nobody used it. You know, there was in Japan for selling mobile phones, I think was really the only use case that in the commercial world that people used. Of course, what you find is there's a couple of very specialist use cases on video that have been maintained. One is telemedicine, telehealth, where the camera does bring to the agent. Agent in this case will be a nurse, a doctor, a specialist, someone who's from the profession, and that video image can actually tell them a huge amount. They can even tell just by looking at the skin what someone's temperature is. So video has a huge amount to add there. Similarly, another area where people were pursuing the use of video for interaction was around high value finance. So typically personal finance around big mortgages, big loans. Each other wanted to see the whites of the eyes, and of course video allows you to do that. One of the reasons why it wasn't used so much in more general interactions was people were scared to. People, you know, Mrs. Black would always say that I have a great face for radio, not for video. So, you know, there are some people who are very self-conscious about using video, and that's from the customer side as well as the agent side. And I think, you know, that has definitely kind of moved on a little bit. And if you think about it now, a lot of people will look at starting to use video as an interaction channel because we're used to it. You know, everybody now is pretty much used to using whatever technology they've been using to keep in touch with friends, family, be it FaceTime, whatever, our own video product, for example. So there's a lot of people who are very, very familiar now, and I think we will start to see that become much, much more prevalent over the next year, 2 years, where it will actually start to be a competitive differentiator for a lot of contact centres to deal with the customers, because people will want to deal in terms of video, you know. And you know, what do you think? You talk maybe to a lot of these people. What do you think in terms of that?
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Alex. I think generally people over the last few years on their smart devices are used to communicating with family and friends through a video mechanism. I think with the COVID situation, you know, all of us, predominantly you've been working from home, all of us have been using some method of collaboration tool to have video meetings. And of course, you know, you've been in people's homes and from all around the world, and you have seen, as you say, their various animals, their cats. We saw a rabbit and a parrot once, and you know, obviously various children playing fun games behind the scenes. But from a contact center agent's perspective, you know, they also are going to have those experiences, and I think that they will be more comfortable, and their management will be more comfortable, particularly as the video technologies and what you can do with that improves. So, for example, with Microsoft Teams, you can put on corporate backgrounds, fake backgrounds. So I think that will make their management more comfortable. You know, I think as we come out of this current crisis, we will find that there are people who've really enjoyed working at home because of the extra flexibility it gives them. Equally, I think there'll be organisations that also find there are benefits, that they perhaps cost considered benefits, but also maybe they also realise that their agent staffing communities, they can get more flexibility if they allow people to work from home. So I think that, you know, with the ability to put sort of a corporate background in place, and I think also the other thing we might find is that there will be some organisations where the staff aren't able to work from home from a security perspective, because it may be that there are access only to certain data applications and sensitive data from the office environment. So I think in future we might even see like a hybrid type of contact centre emerging, more so than we've seen in the past, where you do have people home working with that flexibility. But then you have the more traditional agents who go back in the shed in the contact center, and there is this hybrid mixture of the two. Now, if you leverage the sort of corporate background behind the scenes on video, which hides the fact that somebody's in their spare bedroom, or hides the fact that the office is a bit messy in the background, from an agent's perspective, they're doing their job. From the customer's perspective, it doesn't matter. That agent could be anywhere in the world. That they've got that face-to-face conversation to be able to progress that interaction.
Yeah, I think you raised some good points. I think I'm not sure the world's ever going to go back to the way it really was 6 months ago. I think the concept of agile working, which we've talked about for years and years and years, but never had the courage, I think, to kind of let it take off. I think that might be here to stay, and that will have a big impact in the contact center. And Pete, you talked about video really from an internal use. Do you see many of our customers starting to look at video from a customer perspective?
I think there's lots of use cases around there. For example, we work quite a lot within the local governments that are there, and people that are using sort of housing associations, those type of people. You think about anything that could possibly go wrong in a property that you have there. Being the customer being able to use that as a tool, not necessarily for the face-to-face interaction that's there, but if something was to happen with my boiler, for example, I could then point the video at that, what model number it is, what the settings of it, things like alarm systems and that are there. That's going to save a lot of people sending people from A to B and traveling on the busy roads that are there. To really bring that into sort of more a visual aesthetic to help support the situation that you're in. So as you mentioned, the medical is a very good sort of industry to describe that face-to-face element that's there, but its video can also be a tool as well around reporting different technologies, problems, but with that to be able to do some show and tell as well. So it's not just really about the empathy or the the customer service of the visuals that's there, but it's actually quite a good tool as well.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And over the last 12 months, we've been 2 years really. We've been integrating our products into Microsoft Teams, and as I said earlier, we've got a couple certified, but they're fairly loose today. The integrations are not as deep as we'd like to make them yet, but that is coming. Microsoft are working very hard to get those APIs, those interfaces available to us. How do you think when those APIs become available? I'm privileged. I sit in the product world. I see some very clever engineers doing some really clever things with Teams today that are very different from the kind of integration we used to do. How do you think, Pete, that's going to change from a product point of view?
I can actually show you, because I think it's one of those cases where a picture speaks 1,000 words, and realistically we can have a look at that from what that would actually look like, because obviously we've got the Teams platform with our presence, our IM video, and things like our documentation and collaboration that's there, things like SharePoint sitting behind the scenes. And everybody's very much focused at this point in getting sort of that voice into the contact center that's there, blending it with the emails and the websites for omni-channel that's there. And the APIs that Microsoft are producing for native APIs to actually be able to control that within the Teams environment will actually open up a whole other avenue of possibilities within the contact center. So as you mentioned, sort of bringing the agents out of the shed, the collaboration with the middle office and the back office is going to be one of those key important things, and being able to understand from a presence perspective who is available, where they are, what their current status is going to be important to the contact center team. But also to bring them in, whether that's in an informal IM, because I need to nudge a little question through to you so I can better answer the customer that I've got in play, or bringing you in to support more from a voice and video perspective will be very important to fulfill that collaboration, to help me have the tools to bring those people to bear should I need to. So we're also going to start looking at bringing more effective agent productivity into there, because there's lots of different other use cases around things like our FAQs and information, or perhaps the transactional customer history that's there. Being able to use the documentation, collaboration, whether that's from Microsoft CRM or something within our knowledge base that's with there, to actually understand the 360 view of the customer from a CRM perspective, but also from the FAQs and knowledge base systems to actually bring the information to bear as these voice and video conversations or IM conversations are happening in real time. Therefore, that's going to actually support our agents, because in our self-service world that's here, we'll be able to linchpin into that at the front end of the conversation. When the person enters the business, they may be going through something like a chatbot or a workflow that's there to try and handle a lot more of those simple abilities of coming into the business. However, the agents will be turning into more of the expert at the back end there. Therefore, we're going to need to improve their tools to make sure that they've got all the right information to hand as quickly as possible, so that we can actually ensure that they're giving good customer service on the most complex elements of the business and treating those more simple ones in the self-service arena as well. It's also about having the reporting and analytics available for the business to actually understand what's happening within that environment. Are there lots of things that's slipping through to the agents at that point in time that I should need to bring through to my self-service application? Because the contact center isn't necessarily just fighting a war. It's actually a series of battles that you're taking place there. There's always one more thing that you can do to improve your defenses. Therefore, it's using the analytics off the back of that to look into things like your CRM, the documents, the type of knowledge management that you're using on a regular basis, to start taking those tasks out of the agent's perspective and improving your self-service that's there, to actually get them to do the next best thing in the background and start pushing more up into that avenue of the 24-hour business that's there. But it's also being able to make sure that you can capture all of that and use your quality management across all of that to ensure that all of the different tasks that you're doing are both in this layer in the agents arena and also within the self-service, that you've got the proper tools to assess what's happening there to ensure that the quality of management stays true, that you're always giving the best service that you can do. To give a bit of an example, because this looks very, very, very complex and how that could come together as a workflow there, we can look at that in the real terms. Perhaps I've just had an operation for a degree, and I might be getting from the medical services an SMS message to ask me how I'm feeling after the procedure that I've had, and that would be your typical automated follow-up that's there. So something would trigger that to go out the door to say, this has happened, therefore now this flag has said there, we need to put that chase up in. So that's using that type of AI technology. But being humans, we're going to reply back to that AI. So I might actually say that I'm experiencing some pain, and is there anything else that I can do about that? So when that comes into the AI platform, that may decide that that needs a human to respond because it's above the abilities of the AI. So we're again bringing the expert into bear here. The expert might decide that using an SMS might not be the best way to communicate that. So this is about mixing the medias there. So we might post a link back to them to promote using things like video and audio within that conversation. During the audio and video conversation that's there, I might ask some difficult questions like, can I take different types of pain relief that's there? Now, that's going to very much depend on what actual treatment that I'm already undergoing. So this is where the AI can still be in line with the agent that's there. Take a look at my patient records that are there and then suggest back to the agent some complex rules around saying, actually, no, that wouldn't be the greatest thing to do. So I am sitting there as the agent at this point in time with all of that support around me. But obviously this person looks like they're in pain. It could be a problem that I need to step into more the expert. So I can actually see if there's somebody in the background around there, perhaps bringing in their consultant at this point in time. Now they're going to be joining into that using both the audio and the video that's there, so we can have that more empathy type conversation going on there. But what's more important, that I can actually see that that person's in pain. I can ask them to undress the wound that's there, to take a look at that that's there, and therefore we can then decide that that might need a dressing that's there. Perhaps it was a little bit too tight. Maybe I need to visually inspect that. So it's about that 360 view around using that self-service coming in the door, supporting the agent using inline communication, and also being able to take that and pass that through all of the information I have within my knowledge systems or within the customer or patient contact systems that's there to give the great advice at that level. But even when we put all of those tools together to bring the expert in is exactly what we need to be on the scenes. And that's again about joining all of the dots for the business to make sure that it's as seamless for the customer as possible.
Yeah.
Another side of that might be in the agent coaching area. So this is sort of an example from, more of a simple one that you really wouldn't attribute to being a contact center is an IT help desk. They're an internal contact center for the business. So this is about you supporting your employees within there. So when I'm putting a call into my IT help desk that's there, it knows who I am. Therefore, it can pull forward to that tier one person that I'm speaking to within the IT help desk, what all my machine details are, what my recent cases are that's within there, and bring that in the line in a nice summary format for me to read already. However, if my dialogue takes place with that person that's there, it might be as simple as I forgot to change my password again. I got all those reminder emails that's in there, but I do need the IT guys to give me a reset that's there. So that will actually pull forward for them the actual prompting, the process or the procedure that they need to do. But this could be a click to script that around there to reset it, because the AI already knows who I am. That could be a one click, but we've got an example within here that we're actually pulling the procedure that they need to follow forward as well. Therefore, even if somebody starts at my IT help desk tomorrow, it's about getting them started, getting them trained quicker, giving them all the tools, because I'm not going to be able to turn around and say to the person next to me, how do I do that procedure when I mute up? Obviously, I could escalate and promote and bring them in, but if we better improve the tools around what they see visually there, then we'll support that a lot better. And this is where the sort of future within the Microsoft Teams, just to bring the aesthetics into it, is everybody will be building their applications into Teams that's here, just like we've done within the contact center, so that you've got the ability to see what's waiting within the contact center, who's available to the contact center, and what type of states that they are. All of the vendors out that way will be collaborating into that Microsoft space that's there, bringing it under one shell for us, and therefore we'll be able to see that a lot clearer.
Thank you, Pete. And I know you've got a couple of live demos coming up over the next few days. So if people are interested, they can join those. So at this point, I'd like to thank you for your attendance in our session today. In a moment, we'd like to address some of your questions. So please feel free to put any questions into the chat window. Just while you're having a think about that, just to mention some of the upcoming sessions that we've got this week. So tomorrow and Wednesday, we've got 2 keynote sessions with Trevor Davis, who's going to talk about quality management within the contact center and Microsoft Teams. Then we have a session on Wednesday with John Cray, who's our VP of Product Management. He's going to be talking about how to build a future-proof contact center of the future with Microsoft Teams. Then we have a couple of demo sessions. So I mentioned that Pete's given us a flavour through the PowerPoint slides there, but Pete will be running a session after this, and then again tomorrow and Wednesday if you're interested in going into a deeper dive, seeing the contact centre with Microsoft Teams, how we've integrated that. And then we also have a session with call accounting. And also we have some interesting case studies that are coming up later this week as well. All this information you can find out more about in our virtual Enghouse booth. So please pop along there to see what's coming up, the times of those sessions, etc. We also, I think this is quite unusual actually, because I heard earlier that not many exhibitors are doing social events in a virtual environment. So for the next 3 afternoons, starting at 4 p.m, we invite you to join our Enghouse Race and Sport TV. So we're going to be doing a Rocket League. So hopefully that'll be a bit of a fun to wrap up your day.
Okay.
So questions, what questions do we have?
Right, we've got a couple of questions, Debbie. First one from Peter. wouldn't managing agents be more difficult when they're working from home? What do you think of that one?
Well, I think the technology does support the ability to manage people from home. As we said in the discussion, that the technology, most contact center solutions are going to be able to give you the visibility of who's logged in, what are they doing. Obviously, with things like workforce management that contact center platforms integrate to, there's the ability to look at real-time adherence. But what you will be lacking is the ability to meet one-to-one with individuals. So I think, that's where things would have to adapt. And certainly probably that's what we've been seeing during the COVID situation. So with applications which allow video collaboration, such as Microsoft Teams, being able to sit down one-to-one and still keep up that personal one-to-one experience, and whether that's to provide positive feedback or to be able to address certain issues, the sorts of things that a team leader, a supervisor would pull somebody aside in the contact center, maybe as a regular catch-up point. The ability to do that will be supported through those technologies.
Yeah, I think the psychology part needs to be understood very carefully, and I think people do need to work pretty hard about keeping morale up. And when particularly we've found things work very, very well for us, but some of the younger staff did struggle a bit, who lived on their own. They found it quite difficult. One of the other questions we've got is about I think, Pete, you've probably generated this, but I'll start the answer. Would reliance on assistance bots make the agent more lazy and inexperienced? I think that's a very, very interesting topic, and certainly something that we're looking at today quite heavily. I think one of the things we're finding is that you can actually monitor the call real time and suggest to the agent certain things that they might be looking to talk to the customer about. And one of the things we found, which is actually quite scary, is that some of the younger agents just coming through from school, from university, and because they're very, very heavily reliant on mobile devices such as their mobile phones, tablets, etc., they're used to being connected all the time. They don't remember as much. So the normal type of training that we used to use in the past isn't something that's as relevant today. One of the things that's actually more important is that we allow people to find the information when they need it very, very quickly. So that's where the assistant bot doesn't so much make the agent more lazy, because it's not that people are lazy, it's just that they have a different way of working today, and it's a psychological thing. And we need our software to adapt to agents of all shapes and sizes, so that they can be more effective. Pete, have you seen anything like that in your practical experience?
Yeah, I mean, certainly with sort of the helper bots that are in there, it's always one of those, spending a lot of time in contact centers over the last 20 years. If I was to wind the clock back when I might have had a little bit more hair there, Alex, certainly one of those things that would have happened was there'd be the inexperienced agents always turning to the side to say, how do I do this? Where do I find that? So it's not about making them lazy, it's just making the tools obvious to them for where they get those replies, those responses that's there. It could be things like simple hyperlinks or processes and procedures that's there. Because if you imagine bringing on a new starter and you're in a work from home environment, as Debbie said, it's going to be more of a hybrid. You might bring them into the office that's there. I think the days of having to and needing to sit someone down next to somebody else with a dual headset to watch the screens are there. You're obviously using things like quality management, where you're doing call recording and also doing screen recording. You can actually segment a large number of training videos from your own environment of here's a good call, here's a bad call, that you can get them to watch for, to look through that's there. But once they the first week that they go live with that, having something that is going to be catering for all of the information that businesses need to know these days and all the different places that they could live, having something that's just supporting them there is going to, as you say, improve their ability to pick things up quicker and self-learn a little bit more around that. I don't necessarily see them getting any chances to be lazy. because all where they're really going to be doing is dealing with more and more complex entities that's there. I don't think you'd ever let me get lazy during my role there, Alex. So I'm expecting my job's just going to get more and more complex as the years go on.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point, Pete. It seems you get bored, though. It seems you get bored.
I'll never do that, Alex.
Peter S. You've obviously been thinking about this as we've gone through the session. Do we think more and more companies would become home-based after COVID-19? I think there's no doubt of that. I think more and more companies will become home-based. I read an interview with Jez Staley, who runs Barclays Bank, who's one of the biggest banks in the world, and he was saying, they've got a building in Canary Wharf that takes 7,200 people. But I think he said he didn't think there would ever be 7,200 people back in that building ever again, because right now Barclays was being run by people sitting at their kitchen tables. I think that is kind of interesting. If you can run a bank sitting at your kitchen table, then I think we will see more and more people becoming home-based or actually agile working, I think is the phrase we'll see, where people will work from home and work in the office. They'll kind of go in and out. Maybe it's 1 day a week, maybe it's 2 days a week. It kind of depends. But I think we will see a lot more agile working over the next couple of years, and I think that's a good thing for a number of reasons. But I do think we will see more of it. Debbie, do you have any views on that one?
No, I agree with you, and I think the COVID situation has really opened up the opportunities there, where organisations can see they can trust their staff to work at home. And as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, that I think they're reaping the benefits of having that additional flexibility. So I do absolutely think it's something that we will see more of in the future, and as we pointed to as well, these hybrid type contact centres.
Yeah, I think definitely the hybrid is something that will happen more and more and more. So we have another question from Alex. Good name. Do you think remote working will affect agent training in the future, and what tools would be required to support this? Debbie, I know that's a passion of yours, and you've been involved over the years in training agents. How do you think some of these things will impact training, and how will we be able to do that?
Well, I think again, it's the technology will support that, because as you said earlier, when you're having these meetings with your staff, your agents, you don't need to sit down next to them, and I think the whole concept of the virtual meetings will extend into virtual training. With the ability to have people on video, you can have two people do a role play with other people spectating and then giving feedback at the end. Also, I think most people are used to doing some kind of self-learning through pre-recorded sessions and then maybe exams afterwards. So I think, yeah, absolutely, the ability to train people in a remote setting is absolutely possible because the technology does support it. Pete, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I think that the tools already exist that's there. If we think about how agents are being trained today, that it's not necessarily that they're sitting, as I said, side by side around sort of the contact center on dual headsets anymore. They can more do that from a room with, things like screen recording and voice recording technologies, and also seeing not only just about learning the tools that they're using, things like their CRMs and their knowledge-based systems that's there, that they can visually see how that happens on there, but how to deal with customers as well. So I have a number of my customers that are actually using their knowledge-based management to record the bad conversations with the customers as well as the excellent ones.
Yeah.
And then getting the agents to actually scorecard them. You could sit someone in the training room and, let them watch a video, for example, that's there, but actually making them go through that in a workflow to give their own ratings around it actually tells you how much they're actually consuming that information as well. So the tools already exist. It's just we're not used to using it in such a distance at this point in time. What we need to do is to say, well, the training room is 30 feet from where the contact center actually is. We just need to get used to that. Might be sort of 30 miles in the future.
Yeah, we got a follow-on question to that one from Alex again. Do we think the contact center will be fully remote in the future? I think we can be. I think we've shown in the last few months that that's possible and that works and can work pretty well. I think, however, because of the psychology, the human aspect of it, some companies will stay more that way, but I think there will be more of that hybrid working where people will kind of come in and out from the shed, so that they've got the socialization and the learning that goes on with people contact, and also it's actually very good for people's mental health. I think that's been a challenge for one or two people during the last few months. So I think we've now reached our time at 11:45. So oh yeah, there is. I've just noticed Randy has put up that there is a survey to give us feedback on our speakers. So that would be Debbie, Pete, and myself. We'd very much welcome you doing that. And I'd like to say thank you very much for joining us today, giving us of your time, because it's the most precious commodity we have, or certainly one of them. And it is greatly appreciated. So thank you very much indeed. Take care and have a good rest of Comms. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Just going to end the meeting now.